Hi guys, welcome to another mental health video. I am your host, Dr. Fuganja. Today we're talking about borderline relationships and, what can cause them to fail and why they might fail. The first one, guys, is a huge one. The first thing you need to understand as the boyfriend or girlfriend of this individual, because there is lesbian relationships out there, right? The first thing you have to remember is whatever they do for behavior, that you don't have to take that personally. I literally treated my borderline girlfriend like gold. I'd bend over backwards for her. There was one night I drove like literally an hour away to make sure that she got bailed out of jail. These are the sweet things that the boyfriends do for these girls. I mean, we literally bend over backwards for these fucking girls. I've been to court with this BPD girl. She took off on me. She takes off on me all the time, constantly. And again, that's those abandonment issues. And she goes, the fear of abandonment. That's why they don't want to connect. She basically at one point had taken off on me and then come back and wants me to go to court so that she doesn't have to go alone because she's getting a PFA against one of these guys that she's dated. A lot of these BPD girls, no offense, they tend to self-sabotage. I mean, they'll leave a guy like me that loves them to go date someone that's physically abusive, verbally abusive, chaotic. Some of these women actually prefer chaos. One of her last relationships, she's literally getting peeled off the couch by the local police with her drunken boyfriend. This is the type of shit these borderline girls, they end up in all these fucked up situations because they have a hard time, one, setting boundaries. Borderline girls have a super hard time setting boundaries. Like, no needs to be no. They have a hard time respecting boundaries as well as setting boundaries. They might show up at 3, 4 in the morning because they're worried you're going to break up with them. Wake you right up out of a dead sleep and not care. That's actually happened to me before with one of the girls I dated that was borderline. Used to wake me up in the middle of the night for sex. She'd show up at my house at like 3 in the morning and demand I have sex with her. Really weird. Whatever. Had to help her out. But anyway, guys, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous what the boyfriends go through. I mean, like I said, we literally bend over backwards for these girls. So the first reason why a borderline relationship might fail is those attachment issues. They have major attachment issues. Like, for example, the girl that I love, she had major issues with her father. So right out the gate, she is going to end up being a men hater because, daddy left her and screwed her over. So now she hates men over it. I mean, that can be as plain and simple as it is. Or she mistrusts men. Dad left me, so now Steve's going to leave me. So now I need to put Steve in the friend zone because dad left me, so Steve's going to leave me. That's as simple as it can be, guys, in a nutshell, is they have major attachment issues. So they're going to push you away when they start feeling those relationship triggers, when they start feeling like you're being too much of a boyfriend. It leads to that engulfment feeling for them, and they feel like they need to push you away. A lot of these girls see connection as a threat. A lot of them have been actually physically harmed in domestic violence relationships with guys, been in super chaotic situation with men. So some of these women are very standoffish and shy in general. So like the girl I date, she just sees herself as an individual entity. She doesn't want to be connected with anyone, but yet she'll still reach out to all these guys to get her needs met, to have sex with these guys, or, get this or get that for them, a place to stay, things like that. So that's the number one thing, guys, that leads to borderline relationship issues is attachment issues. The next major barrier that I can think of right off the top of my head, because this is kind of an improv video, is probably the mental illness itself. I mean, That one of the girls I dated that lived across the street here would do really fucked up shit. Like for example, the boundary setting. She wanted to date me and another man, which led to issues between me and him, and I ended up going to jail over it. I ended up pushing him one night when I was drunk, and I probably wouldn't have done that if I was sober, but I was drinking, right? And she was behind all of it, you know, stirring the pot. So anyway, she calls me up one night, tells me that he's beaten her or something like that. I end up calling the cops because I didn't want to deal with it myself, because my way of dealing with things might be different. But dispatch tells me go outside. And so when I went outside, he was out there, and me and him end up getting in a tussle. They end up taking me to jail that night, but they dropped my charge because it was a domestic violence thing. But anyway, guys, it's like that mental illness is a big thing for the BPD, and I'm not saying us boyfriends are 100%, clean. A lot of us have mental health issues, personality disorders like conduct disorder, antisocial personality disorder, narcissism disorders. So us men are not perfect, and that's not the whole aim of my videos. It's not meant to be perfect or anything. This is kind of like a support channel for the boyfriends of boyfriends that are dating women that are borderline and have had relationship issues with borderline women. It's kind of a support channel in a way. That's part of my channel, is supporting the boyfriends of borderline, because I almost took my life over the girl I was in love with. I was devastated. She broke up with me on like Christmas Eve, and I was like suicidal at the point, almost took my life. So I use that as a catalyst to reach out to the other guys that are going through the same shit. And I want to prevent you guys from killing yourself. Like for me, my motivation to stay alive is my family. My family, my work, my coworkers really need me a lot. Coworkers tell me they love me a lot. So having those motivations to live is super important, you guys. So the mental illness is huge, guys. The mental illness, like one day she disappeared on me for a couple days, and I went and checked on her. She calls the police on me. I think that was a PTSD thing, because she had a former situation where a same situation where a guy had shown up and assaulted her almost to the point of death. So I should have, in hindsight, I should have said, you know what? I'm not going to go up there and knock on the door. I didn't realize it would trigger her PTSD, just me knocking on the door. But it triggered her PTSD. She ended up calling the police on me. They came here and everything. She ended up going to the hospital, guys, and in a BPD psychosis, and it ended up ruining our relationship. She spent a month at the Veterans Hospital. Literally ruined our relationship. She moved out of state. This is a girl that I absolutely loved to death. I mean, we were having sex. We were super close. It was one of the most loving relationships I've ever had. It was one of the most romantic relationships I've ever been in, as far as intimacy is concerned. I mean, it was a beautiful relationship. So relationship with borderline girls can be wonderful, right? So the mental illness that the girl has is going to be factor 2 here of things that lead to the breakup. It can be delusional shit. They might have something in their mind that you've done, or something that they think you're going to do. It can be all delusional shit that they break up with you over, stuff that is in their mind. They think something's going on. They might be paranoid about something that you've said or done, or thought you've talked to somebody. Paranoia can be a big factor of BPD. They can think people are talking about them when they're not. That could lead to a breakup. Hey, you're talking to my mom. Hey, you're talking to my dad. I'm breaking up with you. Like it could be delusional shit in their mind that leads to the breakup. Impulsivity. Like, for example, this girl gets out of the hospital from being in a psychosis and just leaves state. Talk about a breakup, guys. I mean, I'm her. I was the guy that had been dating her for a couple months. Actually, kind of fell in love with the girl quick. She ends up just leaving state. That's impulsivity, guys. Because then when she gets there, she's like thinking to herself, "Why the fuck did I just leave the guy that loves me, cares about me?" You see what I'm saying? So that's obviously destroying, that's self-sabotaging our relationship, destroying our relationship. because I didn't break up with her, right? I was going to be there for her after the hospital, after she got out of the hospital, but she just leaves state after that. So they can be their own worst enemy, guys. I would have literally bent over backwards for this girl, been there for her, supported her, loved her to death, but they sabotage that shit that's good. She hops on a plane, leaves state. So the mental illness of the BPD is factor 2 of causing relationship issues. And just to recap what I said about the boundary thing is borderline girls do have issues setting boundaries. That can be an issue. Jimmy John wants to come see them at their apartment and they don't say no. Now there's a fucking problem between you and them because she fucked the guy. You see what I'm saying? Their lack of boundaries causes issues. You see what I'm saying? Like for the girl I dated across the street here, she's letting her downstairs neighbor come upstairs and hang out with her. That eventually ended up her asking us for a threesome and stuff like that. I'm not going to go into crazy details about that shit, but it ruined our fucking relationship. That bullshit about her wanting to date me, wanting to date the other guy at the same time. This is borderline insanity, you guys. Borderline insanity. So her lack of boundaries, like when I first started dating her, because I was dating her first. When I first started dating her, she was allowing her downstairs neighbor guy to come up and hang out with her. That's a fucking boundary issue. She should have said, I can't have you in here because I'm dating somebody right now. I don't want to ruin what we have going on. But like I said, guys, those lack of boundaries is what causes issues. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was perfect in that whole fucking game. It was like a love triangle at the end. Because like I said, I started dating her, and then he ended up being her downstairs neighbor, going up to her house. That ended up them having sex. They ended up going crazy, shit like that. Then me and him end up getting a tussle out here, end up going to jail over it. So guys, do you see the fucked up shit that happens in these relationships? This is all a true story, you guys. So that's factor 2 is the woman's mental illness. The BPD, the borderline personality mental illness, is a huge factor in ending the relationship. So we talked about the first factor. We talked about the second factor. Now let's talk about factor 3, which would be, let's see. Well, one, we can start with the pushing away. They constantly push you away. Like the day that she took me out to, the girl I love we went out to eat, right? She's like, takes me out to lunch. She invites some other guy to lunch while we were there to ruin the intimacy between me and her. So pushing away behaviors could be factor 3. We can think of a couple more along the way. Sometimes a borderline girl's promiscuity can be a big problem. The BPD girl I loved could not stop bouncing guy to guy to guy to guy to guy to guy to guy. Literally. She had stayed at my house for a while. She was dating while she was there. She had me, her loving friend, and then because she never wanted to call me her boyfriend. And then she had like a couple other dudes in to fuck her, things like that. So my point is, guys, the promiscuity can be a major fucking factor because oftentimes these borderline girls aren't satisfied with just one sexual partner. They got to fucking bounce from place to place, impulsively, guy to guy, break up, go to date another guy, break up with him, go to another guy, break up with him. So their impulsivity and stuff like that could be also factor 3, as well as the sexual promiscuity, things like that. But I think factor 3, guys, could actually be, I'm going to put communication as factor 3. Communication is a major fucking issue with borderline relationships with guys like me that don't have borderline. These girls, when they get upset, they just shut down. That is the opposite to a good relationship. That is the opposite to working things out. That is the opposite to processing things with your partner. And that lack of processing, that material is what leads to the breakup, because things aren't resolved, things aren't talked about, feelings aren't shared. Because feelings aren't shared, these women become toxic. They hold all these resentments in towards their abusive parents. They don't forgive them. Like, I forgave my dad for child abuse, things like that. He used to like slap me around and stuff. I forgave him for that, and I think that's why I'm not a toxic person, because I forgave him for that. Um, you have to forgive people sometimes, because sometimes they might not even know what they're doing. Like my dad, maybe his thing was a mental illness. Maybe he didn't even realize he was doing it. Maybe it was a psychosis. Um, BPD girls can go into psychosis too, guys, when they're stressed. But the communication factor is going to be factor 3 of why these relationships fail. That will be factor 3 is lack of communication. The girls, they just shut down when they're upset. They run away. They block